Awesome. So, welcome to this, Feedback Friday session. This has been really fascinating for me because, again, the R&D teams ke saath, I think I've been having a lot of fun with the exploring the concept, thinking about how it changes our life, how it changes our profession. And this week, we are going to be talking about XR. Right? And XR is basically could be augmented reality, could be virtual reality, could be, mixed reality, right? So it could be any types of reality, but I think it's not as commonly understood, but it is a space that is going to be expanding very, very quickly. It's just going to be like AI. Suddenly, one day, somebody is going to create a tool that makes things happen magically, and then all of a sudden, it's going to explode all over the web. So it's important that we understand. And again, some of you might be interested in exploring those careers and be good for you to realize like, okay, how should I build my career into XR spaces? So with that said, today, I just want to focus on what is extended reality. I want to just get you guys comfortable with it. And then we will talk about how we can innovate for it. And then we can get going. Okay. So if you could present the presentation, the slide deck, please.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you 3 different types of applications. And I want you guys to think about, well, what are the similarities and differences between all 3? Okay. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So here's an application where somebody is basically sitting on physically they've got a steering wheel in their hand, but really what's happening is they are driving a car. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. This is one where they have a headset and they are able to see all these virtual Pokemon as they're walking. Okay. So this is happening in their, they're able to see these butterfly Pokemon or, Charizard. I think I know one of them, but yeah. So you see these Pokemon out there and you're kind of interacting and engaging with these. So this is the other design. Let's go to the next one. These are those visual filters that we see in our apps where you can basically put ears or change your hairdo or whatever. And so these are. So what do you think is the similarities and differences between all 3 of these? Anybody?
Sir, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Achyut.
Yeah, so as of now, I'm able to spot one difference out of the 3. I'm still going through what are the similarities, but one difference I spotted, good spot was probably this one, which is right now visible. This is kind of whatever is being done, it is still on the screen. It's not yet, it's unlike that Pokemon thing or something. It is not happening off the screen kind of. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm not able to articulate well.
Right. So you're basically saying you're looking at the app and it's enhancing what you're seeing. Is that right?
Yeah, probably it's still kind of a mobile kind of a device, or
okay.
Still fits into a format of what we are accustomed to as of now.
Okay. So essentially what you're saying is this is just this is not immersive, but it is based on your mobile device. You can look at it and you're basically seeing how it works. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, for example, if I have to think in terms of design also, probably the dimensions and everything also there will be some kind of familiarity because it is happening on the devices that we already know. But whereas the
True.
Pokemon Go or some other things, I was not actually clear as to what was the first one. But they seem
Okay.
to have a completely different device upon which these things are happening. So
Right.
probably from a designer's point of view, we might have to look into a very different kind of a device environment and all.
How many of you have actually used Google search or Google Lens where you search for T-Rex or something, some dinosaur? How many of you have tried that app? Anybody tried? Just raise your hand. Nobody? Okay, Saddal is done. So Anita is done. Anita, what's your experience been?
I've used Google Lens to derive text from images. That is what
Okay,
Google
so
Lens is famous for. Like
all right.
Google search for
Okay.
dinosaur. What were you saying about that?
So
Searching.
when you search in Google for the name of a dinosaur, you can just probably do it on your mobile app right now. When you search for, let's say, Tyrannosaurus Rex, so I'm just gonna try that right now and see how that plays out. But when you try, go into Google and type in, let me see, Google Chrome and type in Tyrannosaurus, Tyranno, Tyrannosaurus. Okay. So there you will actually see a choice that will say, see this in virtual, in the virtual environment, right? And you can literally like take your camera, it goes into your camera app, and as you're moving your camera around, you're able to see the dinosaur right there. Right. So that is one. So, and I can probably share with you how the different guys are there, but let me see. Yeah. So you see there's an option that says 3D. So I'm not sure if you can see my phone. Can you stop sharing the screen? Sorry.
Prasad,
Yeah.
since your background is blurry, your phone's being blurry as well.
Okay, 1 second.
Probably
This guy takes me to YouTube. So let me just stop blurring my background. Okay. So when you search, are you able to see my screen? So right here,
Yes.
you see there's a little dinosaur 3D. It says 3D. Right? And when I click on it, oh crap, went to the wrong one, but 3D, right? So I'm able to see this. Okay. I'm able to hear the sound. And let me see if I can move it closer. And right below, there is an option that says and then I basically have to unlock my screen, view in my space, unblock my camera. And it basically asked me to move it. And I would just say, encourage you to kind of play around with it. And as you move your camera and stuff, that literally you will see the object happening right in front of you. How many of you have kind of seen that now happen to you on your cameras? Let's see. We need to basically. Anybody got it? Awesome, Abhishek. So this is the other way of doing it, right? So this is also the in-app kind of a model. But what is happening is now you are able to see dinosaurs in your space. So literally my daughter, she loves doing this. She loves playing with it. So what is interesting about this app?
I just got a view in actual size and this thing just expanded and now it's there.
So what do you guys think?
So it is like creating something which is not there in the virtual reality aspect and also in the filters in the Snapchat filter, creating something which is not there. So
Right.
that excites, like creates curiosity and fills up with something that we are looking for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then were you able to get the audio on it? How many of you got the audio on it? Say Abhishek, Saransh. So what do you think? How is this app different from the Snapchat app where it will put ears and stuff on you? How is this different? And I think it works with a few animals as well. I think you can probably search for elephant and all that. So yeah, Anita, it's more immersive, right? Whereas Snapchat was just looking at, putting ears on you. This is actually bringing something into your environment, right? So there is the aspect of interaction. There is the aspect of sound. It's a lot more richer than just putting ears or changing your hairstyle. Right? Now, if we go back to the presentation, now the question then is the third design that you saw, right? Where somebody was literally sitting in this other reality. There's nothing real there, right? So you got this steering wheel on you. If you go to the first one design, the first one, there's nothing real there. You just have a steering wheel, but you're in a completely different world altogether, right? You're on the highway, you're driving down the highway, you have other traffic and all that. So there's nothing. You literally are, in a completely different environment. So how is this different? Anybody?
Can I say something
Yeah,
about
go
it?
for it, Akash.
So this looks like more like a simulator, I would say. But this is connected to a physical object. So it's getting more real. It's actually more immersive than previous two.
Right. Yeah. So it's completely immersive. So go ahead, Shiva.
Yes, sir. The difference I observed is like this one is completely generated in the computer. So you can have the feel of realistic world. The second
Right.
one, I feel that we can like feel the computer generated objects in the real world. Like we can look around and so we can have that objects around us.
Correct.
So that is the
So
difference.
that's awesome, right? I'm glad you bring that in. So when you start thinking about the three, in the first one, right, where they were putting ears on you, okay, it was a modifying your reality, right? Where in the second one, it was a combination, right? It was modifying your reality as well as creating a new reality, right? Where the dinosaurs were all around. It was creating, in this one, it's creating a completely new reality altogether, right? So that actually is the core difference between all three of these different applications. And I want you to think about this, right? As I'm presenting this, I want you to think about what do I need to learn in order to be able to do this kind of work? Okay, keep that at the back of your mind. Right? So literally in this is what you call virtual reality. There is nothing else. Everything, the reality is completely different. You have been brought into a new reality. So that is what this is, virtual reality. Okay, in virtual reality, you're creating completely different interactions. So in this case, you got a steering wheel, but you could also interact through your actions. You could probably interact through your emotions. You can, probably interact through, your touch, or, these multiple modalities that you can interact with. Okay, so there is one part how you're collecting the data, and there's the second part how you're communicating what you've done. Go ahead, Tejas. You have something to add?
Yeah, so the way I see it is in one layer of this is you're putting yourself into the screen and altering the reality. The second is you're putting something which is on the screen into the real world, which is like the Google Lens. And the third is you yourself are trying to enter the virtual world, which is the immersive, the 3D world that we are all talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely, right? So this is going to be, this is what is called virtual reality, right? Let's go on to the next slide. So this is called mixed reality, right? So in mixed reality, your reality is mixed with something virtual, right? And there could be a lot of interactivity built into it. So technically you could be walking and these guys could be making way for you so you could walk through the way. So there's an interactive component that's also possibly happening, okay? So, or possibly be programmed in, okay? They could also be, now when you come to the third one, which is, this is also similar to the Google 3D, which is where you're looking at the dinosaur. And again, if you guys haven't checked it out or you haven't got it, just search for dinosaur or just search for how to get Google 3D and you will see tutorials of that. And it's going to be a really awesome experience the first time you see that. And it's like magical. Now, this is the third one, at least for my daughter, she absolutely loves it. She wants selfies taken with the dinosaur, and that's what she does. So now when you come here, this is basically you're augmenting your reality. You're just adding on to that reality where you're saying, hey, I'm getting ears or whatever, and that is what the difference is. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Right. So when you're thinking about how to create these apps, okay, this is a multi-sensory approach, right? Earlier, when you were thinking about it, you know, it could just be simply a visual experience, but really you have the opportunity to think about multiple senses, okay? So there's visual, if, for example, the dinosaur, you also have an audio, right? Now you have something called haptic gloves. You can wear a glove and that could give you a sense of touch, right? So there is a sense of touch that you could potentially program in. Now, smell and taste are still a little ways off, but I've been told that there's been a lot of research on how you can simulate the senses of smell and taste. But again, when you're thinking virtual reality, these senses become much more sharper. And as designers, we have to be thinking about how people are sensing. Now, one of the examples that I keep thinking about is, you know, when we go to an aquarium, or at least when I took my daughter to the aquarium here, we sat in a movie that was a 3D movie. But as we were watching this shark jump out of the water, we were feeling the ocean spray on us. Okay, so somebody was spraying water on us. We could actually smell the salt water. So there's this whole experience of smelling and tasting and stuff like that, that you can immerse yourself in. Okay, so the question is, you know, okay, you are doing all of this, but what can we do with this, right? So what are the applications? So can somebody tell me what are the most, you know, interesting ways that you can apply these kinds of applications as? Anybody have any idea or thoughts? Go ahead, Simran.
For people who are disabled or paralyzed, who are not able to travel to another country or do not have the means to travel to another country, could be taken to Singapore while from your bedroom, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're in the hospital and you want to attend your family member's wedding, you can go in, right?
Also,
now
like,
this is interesting. How many of you have heard of live streaming weddings? Has anybody heard of that concept?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like this whole deal of like, yeah, if you can attend, we'd love to have you, but if you cannot attend, we can live stream the wedding. Right? Exactly what Simran is talking about. Go ahead, Sadhar.
Like we can also use something how LensCut does actually. Like you can just have a scan of your face and try different lenses, how it looks on your face actually.
Absolutely. Now think about that, right? So that is kind of amazing because you don't have to have a showroom. Imagine one of the biggest expenses that you have as a business is putting showrooms up, isn't it? Now, if you don't need a showroom, you can literally go in and try on different glasses. It's a completely different ballgame altogether. Not just that, by the way, you don't even have to hire showroom people, the people who will come and show you the material, isn't it? So you are saving on salaries, you are saving on facilities, which is almost like about 20 to 30% of the cost. So you can get it for cheaper. You as a customer can get it for cheaper. and me as a business can run my business for cheaper, and I can reach out to more customers than I can ever do, right? That's actually like an amazing business model. Yeah, go ahead, Achut.
Yeah, so I don't know how far these smell and taste have come. I'm sorry. I'll just stick with smell. So I was kind of thinking, there are so many e-commerce applications. Probably if I have to think of one product, like, let us say a perfumes application or something like that, they can actually, users can have this thing of, they can actually smell their products, or for smell, even food applications, like they could there are so many things that are being done by the applications to make the customers order food more and more. Probably when I'm selecting a cuisine, if it could emulate some smell, I would be more enticed to make an order, kind of something like
potentially
that.
right now. Think about how are they currently doing it. How do perfume companies sell perfume to you? Anybody? Has anybody seen any examples of that? Has anybody seen those magazines? I don't know. It used to be in my time, probably your generation, you may not be. You get these magazines, really nice, glossy magazines, and there'll be a little thing like lift it up and you can smell the perfume, how it smells. How many of you have kind of had that experience? Yeah. So now the question is, can you now take that and integrate it into an experience where you are able to look at it in a virtual world, go smell it? Now that's a very interesting experience, right? It's a sensory experience. But let's actually think about what are the other applications that it could potentially look at or that you're familiar with, right? Anybody else have any other ideas? Go ahead, Akash.
I have an idea, but actually, Maruti Suzuki uses a simulator to train people how to drive, basically. But I think they can more improve upon it by bringing more immersiveness in that.
Right. Now, this is fascinating, right? So why does Maruti Suzuki, in fact, if you are learning to fly an aeroplane, any Air Force or, any airline, right? You have to do certain number of hours in a simulator, flying a plane and all that. Why do we do that? What is the benefit of learning to fly or practicing to fly in a simulator, or even somebody with 10,000 hours of experience flying a plane still has to do maybe like 50 hours on a simulator, right? Why do we have to do that? Does anybody know? Any thoughts?
Can I give a take on that, sir?
Yeah, go ahead, Achal.
So probably travel from place A to B nowadays has become so fast, and the machines are also so complex. For example, if we have to consider flights, airlines, like maybe they might have had a extensive record of what all things have made for a air crash, and probably they can simulate all those and train the pilot for an edge case scenario where they will be able to take a last minute decision so that lives are saved and things like that. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, that's absolutely correct. Because when you're flying a plane that costs like $100 million and you have 200 people's lives in your hands, you cannot afford to kind of take the risk and say just fly it, and if you have a bird strike, then wing it, right? So you have to create the system and process where people are practicing. Okay, you're flying in this simulator, suddenly you got a bird strike, you lost 2 engines, what are you going to do? Suddenly there's a huge wind and there's rain and lightning strike, what are you going to do? Suddenly your computer switch off, what are you going to do? So these are all edge cases. So literally every pilot has to know all of these edge cases, because the cost of failure is very, very high. You cannot afford to fail because so many people will die, right? And that's why these guys every year have to spend so many hours in a simulator, right? Now, when you think about Maruti Suzuki, why are they doing it? Well, they also don't want to take their vehicles and get them crashed. So you sit in a simulator, you practice it, and then you go out in the real world, you are in a much better position. So you master the machine and you kind of go out. So what is happening there is you're reducing your risk of failure, right? You're reducing your cost, okay? So these are the things, that is where augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality is starting to come and play in, right? So when you look at Lenskart, that's about reducing costs. It's about reducing time because the customer does not have to sit in a vehicle and like travel all the way to your showroom. You can just literally get it's an instantaneous experience, right? Now, go ahead, Tejas. You have something to add?
Yeah, so I was thinking more in a education kind of a system where you could teach astrology, as in you could be virtually on the moon and teach student about them, or it could be in medical field where you could literally be inside a person and you could see the veins, the hearts, and everything, and teach them how it works. So,
yeah. So let's actually think about that, right? So kids, or even adults, right? I mean, where I stay in Cleveland. So Case Western Hospital, Case Western University is one of the oldest universities in the US. And they have created a complete system where you can dissect a human being virtually, right? And it's the only one of its kind. Now, that has got so much demand from all the other universities here. What is it doing? What is the benefit of that kind of an app?
then it just like to actually do things like this is very difficult and very expensive. Also, you need live test humans, right?
So there is cost, right? You also have to get cadavers, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to do live dissections. I mean, not on people, but other animals. So there's ethical concerns that are in place. There's the cost of doing stuff. And also there's learning, right? It is accelerating your learning. If you made a mistake, you cut something by mistake in the real world, you can't uncut it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas in a virtual environment, you can literally see now, how things go. And there's also an ideal kind of an environment, which is a perfect, reality, right? So when you get a dead body, you really don't know what the state of that dead body is, right? So every body is going to be different. And so you have to adapt to it. Whereas here you have an ideal body, you practice on the ideal body, then you go to a reality case, you're much more prepared to deal with that, right? So go ahead, Tanya.
So one of the examples which I have witnessed is that the very boring experience of museums has been transformed by it. Like they now give QR scanners there and you can scan and it could be like brought to the reality or the information is displayed through your mobile phones or tablets.
Right. Exactly, right. That is a really amazing use case where, history for us, when we would go to a museum, somebody would say, this is the Chola Empire, this is how they used to do this and all that. And that was the end of it. I don't know what Chola Empire is, kya tha unka. But, imagine for a kid today, they can go into a museum and they could really see somebody wearing the jewelry. They could see whether they were rich or not. They could see what kind of food they were eating. You're accelerating learning, right? Because you're learning through multiple modalities. It's like, even now people say like, what is the best way of learning language is go to a different country, okay? And just sit there because khana, you can't even eat food without knowing that language. So you literally have to walk through the place. You have to speak in that language. You have to immerse yourself before you can kind of learn. And that's the fastest way to doing it. So this is creating these immersive experiences that you will never forget because sight, sounds, smells, there's so many things and you're walking, you're engaged. It's very different from a teacher just giving you a class. So that's right, absolutely right. And so when you think about it, you have these modalities, you have some of these really amazing applications. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So when you look at these opportunities, right? So gaming has always been on the forefront, right? Military has also been another area that has been on the forefront. In fact, military was number one because I still remember almost like 40 years ago, my dad was in the army. So I would, he was in the air defense artillery. So you have these huge shells, like, as big as your arm, okay? And these guys kind of go shoot up planes and all that. Each one of these shells costs like $3,000 or $4,000. To just fire. And so if you want to teach people how to fire shells and you use a gun, it's really expensive. The army can't just teach people on real equipment. So I remember going to this huge dome. It was like spread across like an acre or acre and a half, big dome. and there was a gun, and then you would see planes flying on the dome, just like a planetarium, and you'd have a gun and you'd shoot it, and that's how you'd learn to use the guns there, right? And so these are cost, the military is one, gaming is the other one, movies, right? You're talking Avatar, you're talking like, when you go to a museum, the movies which give you sensory experiences, entertainment, these are all early adapters, right? But right now you're seeing a lot of it coming in retail, education, real estate, healthcare, remote working. All of these spaces are now starting to expand because, again, imagine collaboration through virtual reality is also a whole new game that's happening, because as our bandwidth increases, as 5G, 6G, whatever, as the speed increases, you are going to have much more bandwidth to do a lot of this stuff. Right? So let's go on to the next slide. So the question then is, how should you think, right? What are the opportunities? If you want to ideate and think about what the opportunities, what applications are out there. Now, the simplest way that you kind of think about is take a domain and evaluate their strengths and weaknesses and see what are the opportunities there. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so if we can edit this, because I know, some folks gave like really valuable data. I want to add one more point. So if you could just edit this document. So logistics ke baad put learning, accelerate learning, just type accelerate learning. Right. And then reducing risk, reducing cost, reducing time, optimizing logistics, right? So these are the things. Let's go on to the next slide. So let's add one more column and say accelerate learning. Okay. So, but while we are doing that, I want you to start thinking like, let's look at retail. Okay. So, or let's take any application and say, okay, retail may, how would you accelerate learning? Anybody? Anybody have any ideas? So you are selling, let's say, let's take the example of Lenskart. Okay. How do you accelerate learning for Lenskart?
What do you mean by accelerate learning, Prasad?
It's whatever you imagine, right? Because you could say, I'm accelerating learning for my customers, right? I am accelerating learning for my employees. I am accelerating learning for, let's say, my suppliers, possibly, right? There are many different perspectives to it, right? I'm also accelerating learning for my, for my leadership, my managers. How do we do that?
So
anybody have any ideas? Yeah, go ahead.
So the thing is, a few years ago, before I got into like UX and stuff, I had this app idea where if immersive reality could be integrated in, with that time Oculus Rift was very popular. So let's say for someone like Tony and Guy to sort of know what haircut would you get after going for a haircut, right? You can sort of get your entire face sort of 3D mapped, and you get an entire 3D view of what your hair would look like. Or same thing can be applied for clothes, like how I look with these particular clothes after I buy them. Right? The problem with online shopping is they don't have the trying on experience. They're able to have the checkout, they're able to have the browse, but they don't have the trying on experience. You try it on and then give it back if you don't like it. So that experience brought in here is what I think. And that will also help with engagement.
Yeah, true. But my question is like, let's take the retail space, right? And how can you do that? So if we can share the screen and we can see the problems on hand, and then people are raising their hand, we can call people so that they can see the problem statement as well as people can ideate on that. But yeah, so go ahead, Sadar.
For example, let's take Lenskart's example. Like if they have the data of my face, like they know what, like now they can specifically target, like for ads, they can target ad to my preference, like which frame looks good actually. So ultimately it increases the conversion rate. Actually, you might buy the thing. Like, and it's like fully automated as well. You do not need people as well for that.
No, this is a very interesting model, right? So retail industries, if you think about it, is like completely virtual. Okay, imagine metaverse. Everything is virtual. Okay, but still real estate prices in a virtual world which doesn't even exist is the same as an acre of land outside. So people are billing like $15,000 for an acre of land in a virtual world. That is what you might actually pay in certain parts of India. Right? So how does that even make sense? Why does it make sense? And I think the argument there is certain real estate more valuable because as you have more people walking around a certain area, you can actually put advertisements in these virtual worlds so you can accelerate how people learn about your product. Right? So that's an interesting learning experience. So go ahead, Sonu.
Yeah, so in like beauty, so they will like take your face and like data and all, and they'll suggest like what kind of products you can like buy or what is the like in morning routine, evening routine kind of thing. And another
Right.
example is the cloud kitchen. So you
Uh-huh.
just scan that and like and they will actually show you the dish like how it will look after or how the like actual like what you'll order what you'll get kind of thing. So if you
Right.
order this you get this kind of.
So this is kind of interesting, right? So how many of you have gone to a restaurant and looked around and seen what somebody else is getting and say, I want that? How many of you have ever done that?
I have
done
done
that,
that a
right?
lot of times. Yeah.
Because something looks that way. And so that's exactly what Sonu's talking about. If you can see what something looks like, you are in a much better position to make a choice. Right? And that's kind of really awesome. So that you can learn about a certain dish, you can learn about how it's made, whatever. So there's an accelerated learning component in there. Right? So let's actually think about how we're going to think about it, right? So in what cases is augmented reality better? In what cases is mixed reality better? And in what cases is virtual reality better? Okay, so let me give you a couple of examples, okay? And then you can tell me which one is better for what, okay? So let's take Sonu's example. You go to a restaurant and you want to see what a dish looks like, okay? What kind of an app is that likely to be? Augmented reality, mixed reality, or virtual reality?
Augmented reality.
Would it be augmented reality?
Mixed reality.
It would be mixed reality, right? Because it's kind of coming in. If you're just seeing a picture, yes, it is what you call augmented reality. But if you're seeing the dish and somehow interacting with it, that becomes a mixed reality, right? So the answer is what Nirupama was talking about. Yeah, it is augmented reality at its minimum. And again, it's important to understand what is the spectrum of things, right? So if you're interacting, then it becomes mixed. If you're in a completely different environment, then it's virtual reality, right? So that's where you're thinking about. Now let's think about for retail, how do you reduce risk? Okay, try before you buy. So if you want to lens card, you can see the item before, and then you can try it, see how it works. You are actually reducing the risk to your customers. Is that AR, VR, or MR?
AR.
AR.
Anybody?
AR.
I would say it's mixed because you're putting it on your face and you're moving, you're interacting, you're kind of seeing how it looks, right? You move your head, how does it look from side to side? So it's actually interacting, it's changing with your actions.
Yeah, if it's for online store, then it would be AR, and if it is retail store, then AR, then mixed.
Tell me more. I'm trying to understand the difference, Anita.
So in online, it would work like Snapchat filter. So there will be different spectacles that I'll be saving or I'll be checking on my face. So it would be just like my filter. It will be showing how it is looking. But if I'm going to offline store, then there I might wear the Oculus and then I'll keep on trying and because I might not have Oculus at my place, or if I have, then I can do it from my home as well.
Okay, I can buy that. I can buy that. So, okay, fine. So now let us say that you're going to a doctor in healthcare, okay? And a doctor is practicing a surgery before the surgery happens. So they have, all your, what do you call, EEGs, ECGs, CAT scans, all that stuff, X-rays. So using all of that, they can create a virtual reality, application, okay? Or a mixed reality application, however you want to choose it, right? So which one is better for that kind of a use case where the doctor has to practice how to do the surgery on the individual? Which one might be better?
Virtual reality.
Why is that?
Like he can, like when he like tries the thing, like you would be only focusing on the patient actually, and you have the full view.
Right. So it doesn't make sense to put them in a mixed environment. You just go into a completely virtual environment where you're able to explore and look at the body. So virtual reality might be a lot better. And again, these are, as designers, you can basically look at the problem statements and ideate, right? So what I would like for you to do now is go into, breakout groups and just go sit there and ideate, right? So for retail, how would I reduce risk? How would I reduce cost? How do I reduce time? So how do I optimize my logistics? How do I accelerate learning? So just take that one problem, you get into small groups, okay? There is a sheet, Google sheet that's available where you literally can think through the ideas and start typing in your solutions, okay? And we're not going to do this. And the reason I'm doing this is I want us to start ideating. I want us to start thinking about new ideas, practicing how to, visualize new concepts and all that. So that is one of the reasons why I'm doing that. The other reason is I also wanted to explore what is possible with extended reality applications. Okay. So that said, we now have about 40 people in this group. So we are going to put people into teams and just go in and then just start discussing. The Google Sheet is available. You can enter. And I would say that, for each of the teams, just pick up one of those use cases and start typing in. Okay. Just copy that row and start typing it in. Okay. Cool. Let's start putting people into groups.
Sure. I'm doing it one by one.
And my advice is turn on your cameras so you can, interact with each other and engage with each other. This is a great way to introduce yourself to your other group members as well. Is there a way we can randomly assign people to groups? I'm just curious.
But we need some people here as well, so I have to manually do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm slowly assigning.
All right. As you get into groups, just start thinking about what domain you want to take. And then once you got your domain, then just start ideating. Don't spend too much time on, the domain and all that. Just choose one randomly and then start thinking about the solutions. So we just have 3 rooms. Is that right, Saurabh?
Yes.
So can I help you allocate people as well?
Yeah. So randomly, I'm looking at the count and I'm assigning people.
Okay. This is fun.
So Astha, Ramya and Divya will be here and others will go.
Okay.
Done.
Awesome. So let's actually think through this, right? Astha, Ramya, and Divya. So let's think through this application here. Let's take healthcare. Okay. So can we think through all the ideas? So healthcare, how do you reduce risk in healthcare? So I will give my first one, which is, you can create a virtual reality app to simulate a surgery before somebody does it. Okay. So what else do you guys have?
Maybe MR would be useful in this case, like as was the Pokemon Go example, we can create holograms for organs and create like these simulators for surgeries.
Right. So that could actually be a mixed reality kind of an application. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So do we have a sheet where we can type in our ideas as well? Or do we just type it into this space?
Yeah, actually, this.
Excel sheet.
Yeah, so for healthcare, risk MR.
Okay. Okay, but okay, so let's go through the other ideas and then let's describe those ideas as we are typing it in. It's not just mixed reality. You're just saying that we want to create a what?
Holograms.
Okay, so that's something we need to put in there. So let me type it in while you guys are talking about it. So mixed reality. Use, right? To practice. Okay, what are the other ideas?
For real estate, VR can be useful.
No, let's just look only at healthcare. So is using healthcare, is there a way that you can reduce the cost?
We can reduce the cost of the devices because like CT scan, MRIs, those type of scans are like cost lot. We can't facilitate in everywhere, even for a practice purpose.
Okay. So how would you are you saying we replace the MRI with these kinds of apps? No.
No.
Or is
We
it the reports you're saying for the users, for the patients?
Okay, so you create reports in augmented reality, is that right?
For training purposes, we can use.
Okay, so train people, train doctors, staff.
Because equipments are costly. And in virtual environment, they get to see and feel how it actually looks like. Makes them easier to use it in the real life.
Okay. Train staff to use expensive equipment, right? And this I'm assuming is what? AR, VR, MR, what is it?
VR. It's total VR.
VR?
Yes, VR, virtual reality.
Okay, got it. How do we reduce time with healthcare? And again, keep in mind that it can be reducing time for a patient versus reducing time for a doctor versus so there are many players. So you can reduce time for anybody in the game.
One of the example was when the doctor is performing or discussing before operating, they look at the patient's data or report, or during the time of operation, they want some vital information. So At that moment, AR comes into picture where they're getting the instant information so that it helps them take the next decision while performing the operation. To see the patient's reports or
okay, so if you, while performing the operation, you want to see the reports or whatever, you can very quickly show it right in their glasses. Is that right?
Yeah. So there is time involved where there's switching back and forth.
Data when the doctors need to change context. You know? So right. All right. Is there any way that you can change logistics?
So now there is online consulting that's happening, and
right.
So the
can have virtual rooms.
Travel time is less, right? I mean, travel time is cut off for patients and the doctors. They save on time. Okay, that comes under time. Logistics, travel.
So what I'm hearing is potentially either a virtual consulting or something. Consulting to talk to a doctor. This is probably AR, right? But the other one that I was also thinking is, how do you improve logistics? Is, you know, the hospital has to buy a lot of supplies, right? I mean, gloves, you're talking about medicines, you're talking about potentially surgical equipment, all that kind of stuff, right? So what if, say, somebody was, you know, wearing Google glasses and walking through the surgical room to make sure everything is in place, and they're verifying, okay, is all the equipment that's supposed to be here for this surgery here, and it's telling you like, yeah, put this equipment here, don't put this equipment here. So you are actually getting feedback on that equipment while you're using it. Right? So that might be one, or it could be like, okay, I'm done with all my gloves. Okay, send me some more gloves. So you can actually do all that in real time. Isn't it? So yeah. So yeah, so how was your experience, Ishita?
That was good. New ideas was coming. Different people, yeah.
So yeah, so what was the most interesting idea that came out of your group? Which group were you in, by the way? Which room were you in?
It was 3.
Okay. So what was the most interesting idea that came out of room number 3?
We took education.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that, the learning experience and we were finding out the risk can be. So that we were figuring out. So that way. So interesting idea. We are concluding it. It's not happening. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So who was in room number 1? Room number 1. Anybody? Yeah, go ahead, Shiva. Came out of your room. What is the most interesting idea that you guys came up with?
So we have added few points. Mukesh, can you share the screen?
So we can go. So where? Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
So in the education, we thought of like there can be a better communication between the student and the teacher. So it will be more engaging, and also we can reduce the cost when they're suppose students want to do the experiments, science experiments. So we can also avoid the risk and the cost also at the same time.
right? So you can avoid that because I mean you're playing with like lots of dangerous chemicals and stuff like that. So that's where you can avoid it. Makes sense. Cool. So anybody in room 3 or room 3 was Ishita, room 2? Anybody in room 2 that wants to talk about their ideas?
So we were talking about the healthcare, that how can we simplify things for the healthcare. So there we thought that for reducing the risk, we will have virtual reality, and for reducing the cost, it was augmented reality. And then for reducing the time, we were thinking that what can be done for reducing the time. So at that time we were stuck and it happened. So for time, I was thinking that should we think about the time constraint only? Because if we think about the time constraint, if people have Oculus at their home, so would it be feasible solution if we assume that everyone has? So then we can write mixed reality there.
Right, right. So my thought is like when you're reducing risk, and again, I'm not sure how many of you felt this, but you can put AR, VR and MR for any of these domains, for any of the problems, right? So one example I was thinking about augmented reality was, let's say a surgeon is wearing Google glasses and they're cutting people up or doing whatever. The glasses are counting how many sponges and what equipment you have used and you have put inside the body. So it's actually tracking and saying, wait, you did not take out one piece of gauze. And I think that piece of gauze is here. Right? So that's actually like a mixed reality and it's reducing your risk significantly, right? Of the patient kind of getting sick again. So I like those ideas. So I think, as you were thinking, how many of you, now the next question comes is, let's go back to the presentation. And this is where I am, I think we need to kind of talk about job opportunities, right? So what do we need to do? I mean, I'm sure some of you are very intrigued. Some of you are like probably not as excited, and that's okay, right? It's important to know what that technology is before you say, I don't want to do it. That's okay. But let's go to the next slide, number 10, where let's talk about what skills are needed to get into these roles. Okay, from a job perspective. So what skills do you think are needed? So how traditionally in the way we describe it is, you have a visual designer, you have an interaction designer, and you have a researcher. And the visual designer generally has strong graphic skills, but they're graphic plus something else. That's what makes them a UX designer, right? So if you were to go into XR, what do we need? Go ahead, Ishita.
I believe whoever's just switching towards the experience, right, virtual reality, augmented reality, they should have a strong visualization power in a 3D space. So either by gaming side or maybe 3D, the visualization aspect, not in the 2D or maybe restricted towards the devices. It
So
should
it's
be
three-dimensional visualization.
Yeah, correct.
So that's like the VFX guys, right? So that's exactly what you're talking about, the VFX guys. They do a lot of visual special effects. And they're also thinking about sound and multiple modalities of that. So VFX guys are ideally suited to kind of get into the multimedia designer, right? So earlier it used to be graphic designers, but here it's VFX that go into audio video design aspects.
Also the gamification. So I would see who are the game designer, it's a best suited, it's a very smooth transition would be, because they know
So tell me more about that, because they're already designers, right? So what is so special about game designers that allows them to transition?
Because they know what are the reward factors which people experience throughout, like no matter it's a badges and all. In 2D, it's something you are very restricted towards the mobile tablets. You have to click somewhere to do things. But here the experience expanded, the spectrum has been very wide. You can touch thing and do the things. You can hold thing and move things. So that is something it's really different.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right, because technically, if you're playing a game on your desktop device, you can in theory click anywhere, isn't it? When you're doing a website, you are saying people will only click here. We assume that people will only click here and you'll go to this page. But in a game, you can click anywhere, you can interact with any of the objects. So generally, when you're thinking about a game, you're thinking physics, right? What are the physics and what are the interaction rules with the objects and what are the objects? That's how game designers think about it, right? But when you are thinking from a web design or a application design perspective, you're not thinking physics. Physics is not something that you think about, right? Or you don't even think about the rules of an object. You are basically creating very rigid rules and you're working on them, right? So people who have experience working in game design can absolutely transition much easier. Okay. Any other kinds of folks that any other skill sets that can help transition into extended reality?
I have one more. So the rules we follow into 2D aspect, the usability and the look and feel, it's little bit different, like the rules we follow. But as a guidelines, like the proper uh, ethics and the what you say, the accessibility point of view, it would be same, but the tweaks will be there. So usability in terms of we need to very conscious about how we are designing things so that it won't be harmful for in a real world that way.
Right. So you also have to think about the physical safety, especially if you're doing mixed reality or virtual reality kind of applications. You're not just thinking about what people are doing in that environment, but you're also thinking about the safety aspects outside. So this is interesting, is Pokemon Go. I'm not sure how many of you played it, is banned in a lot of public spaces around the world, because literally they would put a Pokemon gym in the middle of a busy metro station where somebody is playing Pokemon. I mean, you could fall in front of a train and get hurt. So there are those kinds of public safety issues that people also have to think about. Absolutely. So let's go on to the next slide. So in terms of the career, right? So I think when you're thinking about a visual designer, that role is changing not from a pure visual space into more of an audio visual design in 3D spaces, right? And it's ideal for visual effects folks. Okay. And these guys can very seamlessly kind of move in. Now, the next aspect, when you're looking at interaction design, you have to think about multiple modalities. So what are all the ways that I'm going to collect the data? It might be through touch, through sense, through movement, GPS. You're actually collecting data from a lot more of the sensors. So you have to start thinking from a sensor perspective. You also have to start thinking about design patterns offered by these engines. So you need to go spend some time with the Unity and the Unreal Engine. Just read up their documentation and you realize what these technologies are about, so you can start leveraging them, right? Now, when you're thinking about research, generally researchers will have the easiest switch because it doesn't matter. Your techniques are the same. The domain has changed, right? However, they do need to expand their scope of thought, not just in terms of how they are interacting in a virtual world, but also thinking about the consequences in the real world and kind of connect those things together. So there are lots of tools that are available for you. And again, play with them, be conversant with them. You don't have to master them, right? So the 3D model like Blender, Maya, and all these guys. Then I've been told there's a tool called Arrail, which is an augmented reality tool that can help you create it. And you have these softwares. Unity is the #1 software that does a lot of this work. So you have Unity and Unreal Engine. So again, you can go check it out, look at what their capabilities are, and then you'll be able to see what it is capable of doing. Okay, so that's what it is. So, and again, Simran, I think you are a VFX guy, aren't you? No?
Motion design.
But you also did movies, right?
No.
It's
I mean,
one.
just a little bit here and there.
Okay. Mohan is a movie guy. Got it. Yeah. So yeah, for you guys, like, for Mohan, especially if you do motion design also is like really good for audiovisual because you're thinking motion, you're thinking the reality of how things move, shake and all that. So I think for you guys, this might actually be a very fun space to play in. So that said, I want to really let's go to the next slide. I really want to thank Ramya, Astha, Divya, and Ajay for their exceptional work. They've spent quite a bit of time researching this, kind of coming out with all of this data and kind of educating me about what extended reality is. So thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause for these guys. Awesome. So let's go on to the next slide. And I think that's probably the end. Thank you very much, guys. Do you have any questions, thoughts, comments, anything you would like to add to this? All right.
So, like,
hello.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Simran.
Me, Benson.
Yeah, Simran raised his hand. So Benson, mind you raise your hand and then I'll call you.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Simran.
Able to hear? Okay. So in the presentation, we spoke about certain, avenues where this could be possible, right? I noticed that all these were B2C sort of places. Could there be a B2B, like just thinking about Microsoft Word or something like that, where I'm not able to visualize that. I can understand how this would make sense in a school or in a shopping application or Lenskart and all those things, but I'm not able to see how it will fit into a B2B sort of a model.
A classic example that I see is like, when you are in a B2B kind of an environment, you do a lot of inventory management.
Okay.
Right? So what if, you were walking down the line of inventory and it's telling you this is available, not available. So they can say, the software is telling you, wait, hey, this bin is empty. Like dog food is empty. I have 5 dog food bags in the back. Tell somebody to restock it. So you can put a restock, right? You walk a little bit further and you see like, okay, dog bowls are there, only 2 dog bowls there. And you say, we are out of dog bowls, reorder, right? So imagine that is a physical engagement, right? Right now, what do people do? They look at an Excel sheet and they're interacting with that Excel sheet saying, okay, what is the quantity? What is this? Should I restock? Should I reorder? What should I do? Correct?
So
whereas this can be in a virtual kind of an environment. You don't really need to go through that. As you're walking down, you're just literally looking at the stuff and your software is telling you what do you want to do and then you're ordering right there.
Okay.
Or another example that I can see is, you can basically walk people around and you can tell like, okay, yeah, you can give metrics. Think about metrics. You can completely revolutionize the whole idea of metrics in a 3D space, right? So you can walk through a real estate and you can say, well, only 20% of the people are coming through this in this lane, and 50% are coming through this lane, right? So if you change from here, you can do what if analysis. All I have to do is put a shelf here, close this lane, redirect traffic here. You will actually get more eyeballs in this space, right? So there are a lot of interesting problems around space planning, inventory planning. There's also lots of interesting ways in terms of coordinating with people, right? So what if, for example, I'm a supplier and you are a store. And again, most of the things that are coming to me are, retail right now, but I sell potato chips to you. I'm Lay's, let us say, okay? And so now what is really important is how much shelf space are you giving and where are you giving me shelf space? It has to be in a prominent place so people can notice it, right? So in theory, you and I could be negotiating and saying, show me your layout before I approve it.
Okay.
Right? So there's a lot of those kinds of things that you can do in a B2B space as well. And it's a way of thinking through it, but there is applications everywhere.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Benson.
So like these all things cost so much of money, like even though like at the first stage only the with people with a more like high cost of who can afford it, like can do it. For a common man, it will be more difficult, in the first stage of this development stage.
Actually, no, I would argue completely differently. In fact, one of the most wonderful applications that I saw was done by these two students as part of their design project, right? And they literally took Unity and they coded it. It took them like maybe about a week to code it. But the idea was you could walk into a museum and you could walk around, or imagine and then you take your camera and you point it at one place and suddenly that world comes alive, right? And it was all done through Unity. So there's lots of APIs available. Unity is like got a pretty much, it's doing a lot of work in augmented reality, and literally the cost of doing it was, and again, if you're wearing glasses and all that, that's a different game. But right now, definitely you can use your mobile app to do a lot of that stuff. Mixed reality and augmented reality stuff, and development is relatively cheap right now. I mean, it's going to get cheaper as time goes, but it's fairly cheap right now. But the R&D team can probably also tell us, like, what is the cost for tools available? I don't know. Would you have any idea?
Yeah, for like Oculus, like something 50 or 50,000 something. I think so. Like,
yeah, but Oculus, if you think of it, $1,000, but that's how much you spend for a mobile device, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, $700 is what you spend on a mobile device. But the question is, like, the problem is you don't have a problem buying a mobile device because you have so many applications that are relevant to you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And if you have to buy like a $700 device for which you might only use it for 10% of the time, that is when we think about it as being expensive.
Yeah, right.
Right. So yeah, I think it's always a question of what is my utility versus what is the opportunity. I mean, what is the cost? And it's always, once the utility increases beyond a certain level, people are going to kind of go down there. And Oculus, again, the big question with Oculus and all of those is that still the best? Because there's lots of headaches and migraines and all that people report. I'm not sure that is still the best option as of now.
Yeah, that's second one thing is the health. So like if we are getting into these immersive things, so we will be more spending more time in these. Even we are spending more time on screens. So by this virtual world and all, so we will be spending more and more hours in this space, and we will be less interacting with the physical world. Like, so that can cause mental problems.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely something that will change the nature of how we relate to each other, how we relate to the environment. So that's definitely a challenge. In fact, one of the things that I've Google Glasses, when it was launched in beta, people would be wearing those glasses everywhere, and they would go to a restaurant and all that stuff, and they'd be sitting there, and other people would get really angry because they say, you know what, I came to a restaurant to, on a date with my partner, and I want it to be a cozy, private kind of a thing, and suddenly you have somebody that's coming in with Google Glasses, they're recording everything that they're seeing. How does that work?
Yeah.
So people would get really mad because they would say, you're taking pictures of me without my permission. And there's a privacy concerns that are kind of coming out because of that.
Right.
Yeah, cool.
So like
really valid points, Benson.
So like I have another question. So like I had a news like some university professionals discovered a device where you can give virtual kiss. Like they invented a mouthpiece, so it can be attached to the mobile. So like if two persons have this device, so like if we kiss on this device through the mobile, so the another person in the another session of the world can feel that. So how this is to the, like it's a virtual, also like how it's a like how we can connect to this one. Like I don't know, like it's virtual or so it's a, like a feeling, like sending a feeling and expression to another.
Right. And I think this also has a very interesting application when you think about robots, right? Remote robots. So right now, like, surgical robotic surgery is becoming a big deal. But, what is the difference between operating with your hands versus operating with a robot, right? With your hands, you're getting that sense of touch. You're seeing like, okay, the skin is soft or this is, hard or whatever. And so the doctor is able to feel the body and make decisions based on what they're feeling. Now, the question is, how can a robot actually give you the same sensations? Right? Because that improves your ability to succeed. Because, if your hands are numb, that's one way of doing surgery. You might still succeed, but you are not getting that feedback. So there's that question about, how do you create those remote experiences where your command and control experiences, or even like, you're saying the whole transmitting the sensation of touch over a distance. And again, these are very experimental applications and I can see them growing. But, even now, for example, if you go, there's a application called Zillow, where you can go in and you can do a virtual walkthrough of a house. Okay. And this application is used to sell real estate. Okay. So again, there are a lot of opportunities around that space, but again, there's also a lot of interesting exploration as well. So we have to wait and watch to see what kind of explorations work, because again, there's a expectation that people have in terms of what is acceptable, not acceptable. So that game has to play out. Cool. So thank you very much, guys. So this next week is going to be like really fun because we are going to be doing this AI-based work. So imagine for work that takes you about a week to do, imagine you can get it done in a day, right? And so this is some really amazing stuff that's going to be working through. We were supposed to do it this week. We pushed it to next weekend, partly because we wanted to make sure we had our we had everything lined up and set up really well. So again, imagine doing your research protocols automatically, having an AI as an assistant to do your research protocols. Imagine an AI assistant that's basically doing all your graphic work, your visual work. Imagine if you had somebody that you can delegate work to, and that is what it is. So it's like a really, really cool presentation. So make sure you are going to be in there for the next workshop. And that workshop is also going to be interesting in one way, is it's going to be very, very hands-on. So for those of you that do not have accounts with ChatGPT or Mid-Journey, I would encourage you to start creating accounts. Don't use it yet, but create your accounts because it's going to be hands-on. You will be practicing how to use these AI tools to get your work done. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. Have a great weekend and we will see you next week. Bye. And Simran, if you could stay back for 5 minutes, that'd be great. Or actually, I'll send you a link and then you can join on that. Okay, cool. Right, bye.